Well, hello once again and welcome to our popular feature, Spotlight on the Cults. We're working through them very, very quickly. We've been looking at some of the more prominent cults, but we're going to look at a cult today that I don't know a lot about, the Unity Church. Tell us a bit about it and who the founders of the cult were.
At the beginning of the 20th century, a couple called Mr. and Mrs. Fillmore decided to commence a new religion called the Unity Church of Christianity. First of all, they're not a Christian church and they are far from united. Mr. Fillmore had no biblical or linguistic training in the areas of biblical hermeneutics. He believed he was a reincarnation of the Apostle Paul, and indeed his whole life, both him and his wife battled a lot of illness and sickness. Considering that they are a religion of health and prosperity, it really is a farce of what the Unity Church stands for.
Did they come out of a background of Ellen White, that sort of background? What was their background?
They are
theologically.
Yes, they are connected in with the Christian Scientist Church, and they have roots of Rosicrucianism, Quakerism, Hinduism, and some of the other Eastern religions.
So they've sort of taken a little bit from each of these and from the Christian side, which they originally came from,
yes,
and turned it into their sort of church.
Yes.
Now, Mr. and Mrs. Fillmore, you say he was a rail worker.
Yes, he was.
So they weren't a sort of rich philanthropist.
They're very poor.
So where did the money come somehow to get it off the ground?
Well, they lost all their money in real estate, and they wanted to make their religion successful. So they travelled around America trying to find a cure for Charles's illness.
What was his illness?
Well, he suffered from many different ailments,
right,
but they came across an acquaintance of Mary Baker Eddy, who of course is the Christian Science founder, and they were able to adopt some of his ideology and incorporate it into their cult, their non-Christian cult. But of course Charles was ill his whole life, as was his wife, and in reality the Unity Church of Christianity is really just a rehash, or a spin-off I should say, of the Christian Science cult.
So if anybody's out there who actually knows a lot about, or knows someone who's actually in the Unity Church, you'd like to hear from them.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who was in the Unity Church. What's it like in England? What's the membership like in England?
Practically non-existent.
Yeah.
It's mainly an American, Australasia set up, if you will. Very wealthy, very successful. The great-grandson, I believe, of Charles runs the organisation today. But once again, they deny the deity of Christ, they deny the Trinity of God, they deny sin, they deny the blood atonement of Christ, and yet he even wrote a Bible dictionary, and yet he had no knowledge of the Bible, and he didn't even profess to be a Christian to commence with. He felt qualified to write a Bible commentary.
I mean, like so many of these cults, we talked about some weeks ago, they all come out of America.
Yes.
And this is another one,
Yes.
and all around about the same time.
Yeah.
Well, I think I asked you last week, is this a coincidence?
What we didn't touch on the previous edition of the Spotlight on the Cults was that the founders of all of the cults, the world religion of cults, not only sprang up in the 19th century, but they were also Freemasons, each and every one of them. And it's our view that there was some form of conspiracy, perhaps, not intentionally, but a lot of disgruntled Masons leaving the lodge, commencing their own private so-called Christian religions.
And I think, as you showed us before, it's endemic in the Mormons, it's
Yes.
the Jehovah's Witnesses, Mrs. Baker Eddy, and so forth. Because it all seems to go back to this Freemason idea, which these cults seem to dip into and take. What would you say about the Unity Church? I mean, do you think it gradually died away, or is it picking up new members abroad, did you say?
I think all of these groups seem to survive primarily because they play the doctrine of sin down. They allow man to feel quite good about himself, and when you tickle ears of people, you can give them a full sense of security, a full sense of happiness, if you will, which for the unregenerate man is something quite rewarding and something to be desired.
So you're saying that if you pray hard enough, God will reward you with money and so forth. But if you don't pray hard enough, then you're not going to get it. And it's nothing to do with the church that encourages you to do that.
It falls back to this sort of idea, it's like the word of faith movement, that God is obligated to answer prayer and give you whatever you desire. And certainly the Unity Church is very big on giving people what they feel they deserve or what they need, when in reality you're told to trust on Christ, and He will give you an abundant life. And that's only through wealth and riches.
Well, there you have it then. Mr. and Mrs. Fillmore setting up this church, and according to them, if you paid more, they'd fill more of your pocket, and health as well. If you know somebody who was in the Unity Church, or if you know anything about the Fillmores that James hasn't put in his article, you'd like to hear from them,
Yes,